Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. We welcome our brothers and sisters again, especially those of Seekers Guidance, our brothers and sisters from Seekers Guidance. We were streaming, the class commenced for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we had to cut the stream because we did not include into our stream of this class Seekers Guidance, and that is from the challenges that we face in the month of Ramadan, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala overlook our shortcomings. So we were speaking about a good ending and bad ending, and we made the example of a person that was in front of the Kaaba crying, Ya Rab, grant me a good ending, Ya Rab, let me die with Islam. And when he was asked why it is that he has been making this dua, he responded by saying that his two brothers, both of them were mu'adhins, and they left this religion, rejecting the book of Allah, rejecting Allah as the Lord, and the reason was for the activity in the sale of the awrat of women, and they were engaged in the industry of prostitution. Now, and one may perhaps add to that pornography and the like. And therefore, Imam Haddad, he said here very, very powerful words, and I apologize for repeating myself for those who are with us. I'm just trying to catch up for those that only joined now. He said that he should also avoid sins and evil deeds, for they weaken Islam, render it feeble, shake its foundations, and make it liable to be wrested away at the time of death, as has actually happened, and we just heard examples of that. Imam al-Haddad continued saying, and we're reading from Councils of Religion on page 8, I'm in the middle of the page, the second paragraph. He said, praise and thank Allah abundantly for the grace of Islam. Remember, we're looking at practical ways in which we can have good endings, how we can save ourselves from dying without Islam. So he said, praise and thank Allah abundantly for the grace, the favor of Islam, for it is the greatest and most immense of graces. Were Allah to give this world and all that is in it to one of his servants, but withhold Islam, it would be a catastrophe for him. But were he to grant another of his servants Islam and withhold the whole world, it would not harm him. For when the first dies, he will end up in the fire, while the second, when he dies, will end up in the garden, Jannah. You must maintain yourself in a state of fear and anxiety of a bad ending, for Allah is He who turns hearts. He guides whom He wills and leads astray whom He wishes, whom He wills. An authentic hadith states, by He with whom there is no other Allah, one of you will keep doing the works of the people of the garden of Jannah until he is 1 cubit away from it. Then the record overtakes him. You will then behave as the people of the fire do until he enters it. And one of you will keep doing the works of the people of the fire until he is 1 cubit away from it. Then the record overtakes him. He will then behave as the people of the garden of Jannah until he enters it. In this is a terrifying threat for people possessed of God-fearing and rectitude, let alone people of neglect and confusion. One of our virtuous predecessors used to say, by Allah, none has ever felt secure from being disposed of his religion but that he was. Our virtuous predecessors, may Allah have mercy on them, were all extremely apprehensive of an evil conclusion to their lives, despite their good works and scarcity of sins, to the extent that one of them said, were I to be given a choice between dying as a Muslim at the door of my room or as a martyr at the door of the house, I would choose to die as a Muslim at the door of my room, for I know not what will happen to my heart in the distance between the door of my room and the door of my house. Another said to one of his brothers, when I am about to die, sit near my head and watch. If you see that I have died a Muslim, take all my possessions, sell them, buy sugar and almonds and distribute it among the children. But if you see that I have died on other than that, then let people know, so that those who wish to pray my funeral prayer would do so in full awareness. Then he told him of a sign by which he would know whether he had died a Muslim or not. His brother later on recounted how he had seen that he had died a Muslim and had distributed his donation to the children as instructed. Such stories of theirs abound. Know that those who neglect their obligatory prayers often suffer a bad ending to their lives. and so do those who neglect obligatory zakah, pry upon other Muslims' privacy, cheat in weights and measures, deceive Muslims and delude them by causing them confusion, whether in religious or worldly matters, and those who belie Allah's saints and disparage them unjustly, as well as those who falsely pretend they possess the states of the saints and their stations and other such loathsome things. That requires us to read again. Right? He said that first of all, the attitude of the Salaf towards wanting to die with a good ending, even though they were righteous people, even though they lived good lives, even though they prayed tahajjud, even though they recited the Quran, even though they fasted, even though many of them reached states of ma'rifah, of gnosis, of knowing Allah. Many of them were awliya, from the friends of Allah. Many of them, Allah purified their hearts such that they gained visions. Right? But even them, they were concerned, what is my state going to be when I die? What will I be like when I die? How unbelievable is it that those people that have dedicated their lives to Allah are constantly worried about their state at the time of death? But you and I, who spend our days wasting time, arguing over trivial things, engage in so many unnecessary discussions, partake in the permissible of this world in such a way that it nearly becomes impermissible. Naam. Sometimes permissible things are borderline impermissible when they become such a great distraction to me. The scholars, once upon a time when they spoke of chess, right? I've recently answered a question on Seeker's Guidance regarding chess for those who want to read, but chess is, in essence, it's not supposed to be haram. In essence, it's supposed to be permissible. But because the nature of chess is such that it takes your attention away from that which is important and causes within you a state of heedlessness, such that you may hear the adhan and not answer the call to prayer, such that the waqt may enter and the waqt may leave, and you'll be so engaged in playing that you may not realize that the waqt has entered and left. Therefore the scholars, some of them stated chess to be haram and others stated chess to be makruh. Of course, someone that plays chess on a very superficial level, such that he or she is not completely engrossed in the game, such a person, chess for that person is not haram, neither is it makruh. But there are other type of games that we have today that is worse than chess. There are young men that are so engrossed in that computer game that it completely takes them away from their surroundings. They'll be sitting with headphones on, and somebody could be dying in the next room and they'll be completely unaware because they're just so absorbed in that computer game. And I'm not speaking about youth, man. My son likes games. Pray that Allah removes his love for games from his heart and replaces his love for games with the love for the Quran. And that for all our children and brothers and sisters. So my son think I may be speaking of him, but it's a reality. We see this. Some people, day and night, they'll be sitting in front of the game. If chess was considered haram, then without a doubt these games should similarly be considered haram. If it reaches a person playing them reaches a point where he's completely unaware of what's happening around him, where he's completely heedless of his Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Naam. So, now, what about us? Why are we not worried about how we're going to leave this world? What will my state be when I leave this world? The story Imam Haddad quoted here, a person, if one of them were to be given the choice, we give you a choice to die at the door in your room as a Muslim, but if you die, you walk from your room to your front door, you'll die as a martyr. What's better? Dying as a martyr means my sins are forgiven. I'll be resurrected with Sayyidina Hamza radiallahu ta'ala an, and all the great martyrs in Islam, people who sacrifice their lives. The martyr, before his blood reaches the ground, Allah forgives him of all his sins. The door of my house, a martyr. My room, just a Muslim. He said, I prefer just to die as a Muslim here in my room. Because from the door of my room to my house, and their houses are not the size of our houses today. Right? The room to the house was a few seconds. In that few seconds, I don't know what could happen to me. I may lose my iman within those few seconds. Rather let me know I'm dying as a Muslim now, than receiving the reward of a martyr if I was to reach the door of my house. I don't even know if I'll reach the door of my house. No. People, scholars of the past, the endings were such that they were so engrossed and connected to Allah that they wouldn't know what's happening around them. Al-Imam Muslim, rahimahullah ta'ala, by way of example, many people don't know how he passed away. Imam Muslim died in a very, I was going to use a word, but it's not going to be suitable for me to use such a word with regards to Imam Muslim, rahimahullah ta'ala. But somebody gifted him dates, a barrel of dates, and he was busy researching hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was looking for a hadith, so he had many books, and he was reading the hadith. قال رسول الله قال رسول قال حدثني فلان قال حدثني فلان قال حدثني قال رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. Not that one, next one. And he paged through volumes looking for a hadith. And while paging through these volumes, he was eating and paging, and his done eats, such that he never realized how many dates he was eating, and that it was harming his belly, because he was so into Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that eventually, on account of the amount of dates he ate on that occasion, he took ill and passed away. Right? One of the Salaf, I just want to get his name for you. Abdullah bin Idris, one of the great pious of this ummah, a ascetic abid. Right? When he was on his last, leaving this world in the pangs of death, his daughter entered. So she began crying. So she saw that her father is leaving this world. Right? Imagine, we don't know what it's like to lose parents, but can you imagine seeing your mother or your father on their deathbed? And of course, many that are listening may be able to relate to this. May be able to relate to this. But just imagine. So his daughter begins crying. So he responds to her and he says to her that, Ya binti, oh my daughter, la tabki, don't cry. For in this room where I am dying now, I've completed 4,000 khatams of the Quran. In this room I've completed 4,000 khatams of the Quran. Imagine. What is my state when I leave this world? Allah. That's the pious one. The way they spend their last days, and we made the example of Abu Yusuf the other day. They had no attachment to dunya. The endings were the most beautiful of endings. Amir ibn Abdullah ibn Zubayr radiallahu ta'ala an, he was on his deathbed, weak, dying, and he heard the mu'adhin calling out the adhan. So he told those that were around him, make wudu for me. He couldn't make wudu for himself, make wudu for me. So they made wudu for him. So he said, carry me to the masjid. So they told him, you're busy dying, you're on your last, take it easy. He said, the mu'adhin has called me, how can I not respond to his call? Carry me to the masjid. So they brought him to the masjid, and he sat down, and they called the iqamah for salah. قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, and he entered salah. This is the son of the famous companion Abdullah ibn Zubayr. By the time he finished his first raka'ah and went into his sajda, he did not raise from the sajda again. How are we going to leave this world? There's a story that I don't know if any of you may have seen what the trains are like in India. So there's a guy going around on the train, and he shouts out. So the famous coffee brand is Nescafe, but he shouts out Nescoffee. So the whole day he's walking from carriage to carriage, Nescoffee, 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 Nescoffee. So you buy it, he serves, he goes on Nescoffee, Nescoffee, until when he left this world, this person that was selling coffee on the trains, he passed on his deathbed. People came to him and said to him, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. Talqeen, reciting La ilaha illallah by somebody who's on his deathbed is recommended. And when the person says La ilaha illallah, you should leave him alone, or leave her alone. so that you know the last words. If the person now says something else, mention someone's name or mention anything else, then again you make talqeen. Recite La ilaha illallah, encouraging them to recite La ilaha illallah. When that person recites La ilaha illallah, you leave them alone, such that the last words that came from their mouth be the recitation of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And when they recited La ilaha illallah to this man, whenever they said to him La ilaha illallah, he said Nescoffee, La ilaha illallah, Nescoffee. So his life was selling coffee and shouting Nescoffee, that on his deathbed, when his life was a life of Nescoffee, his death was a death of Nescoffee. No. At those moments, we're no longer in control of our limbs or our bodies. Yallah biha, yallah biha, yallah bi husn al-khatimah. Yallah biha, yallah biha, yallah bi husn al-khatimah. Yazid al-Raqashi, when he left this world, he was crying. So he said, Yazid, who is going to pray salah for you when you die? And who's going to fast for you when you die? Now we are able to do things for ourselves. I'm able to recite the Quran now. When I die, I won't be able to. Who's going to recite Quran for me? So Imam Haddad wants us to make the most of this time in this world. He went on, he says here, the passage that I wanted to read again was people that are prone to have a bad ending. He said, know that those who neglect their obligatory prayers often suffer a bad ending to their lives. My compulsory 5 times daily salah is not a negotiable thing. It's not negotiable. My charity that I'm going to put into the box at the masjid may be negotiable. And I'm not discouraging anyone from not giving sadaqah to the masjid. Right? But my 5 times daily prayer is not negotiable. Know that those who neglect the obligatory prayer often suffer a bad ending to their lives. And so do those who neglect obligatory zakah. This is a month where many people pay their zakah. It doesn't mean that there's a pandemic that I'm absolved from paying my zakah. Not paying my zakah is a sign of a bad ending. I'm paving a way for a bad ending. Pry upon other Muslims' privacy. Cheat in weights and measures. Deceive Muslims and delude them by causing them confusion, whether in religious or worldly matters. And those who belie Allah's saints and disparage them unjustly. Those people who speak out against the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not a good ending. There was a scholar in Yemen. A faqih, a jurist whose name slips my mind. And he used to speak out against other scholars. I forget, I'll have to check the story for you, but it's a real story. He used to speak out against ulama, awliya, asfiya. He himself was a scholar, but he had a bad tongue. He used to speak ill about others and say bad things about them. Right? And we know that in the scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, they say that, they said, no, أن لحوم العلماء مسمومة, that the flesh of the scholars is poisoned. What does it mean? If you eat from their flesh, if you speak ill of them, it's like eating poison. مسمومة. وإن عادة الله في, and Allah's custom with regards to those who speak out in ill of them, معلومة, is known. So be very careful when it comes to the friends of Allah. Imam Haddad said that, and those who belie Allah's saints and disparage them unjustly, speaks ill, say bad things about them. And we hear this. We have saints live in our community. Cape Town is known for our karamat, for our maqamat of the salihin. There's young men that never mind protecting their tongues from these saints, because if you don't know, then for the very least be quiet. But no, they find the need to find something bad to say, to create doubt in people's mind regarding the status of the awliya. So they said, how do you know he's a wali? How do you know he's not just an ordinary man? How do you know this? How do you know that? And in that many a times there's disrespect. And the person that shows disrespect to Allah's saints and disparage them, speak out against them, a waliullah comes to visit, one of the habaib or a sheikh of Naqshbandi, whoever. And then, I don't know the shaykh, but I want to sound clever. So I say, what do you know? Who's he? What's this? What that? He said this, he said that. And then what am I doing for myself? I'm doing a great injustice to myself. And I may be, my critic or ill speaking of them may be a cause that I have a bad ending. As well as those who falsely pretend they possess the states of the saints. And these are, they are many. There are many that pretend to be from the awliya. There are many who pretend to be from the saints. They wear the turban, they wear the jubbah, they can talk the talk. People start seeing and imagining them to be great, so they imagine themselves to be great. And that's a trap that anyone can very easily fall into. We must know ourselves. Like I must know myself that I am far from them. My actions is far from them. My character is far from them. My states are far from them. My heart is far from these. But somebody could very easily be misled. So I'll adopt this title and I'll adopt that title and I'll display this ijazah and I'll display that ijazah and I'll walk like them and I'll talk like them and give everyone the impression that I'm from among them. And all I'm doing is I'm paving a way for a bad ending for myself, as well as those who falsely pretend they possess the states of the saints and their stations and other such loathsome things. Other things that threaten their perpetrators. I'm reading the words of Imam Haddad. Other things that threaten their perpetrators most seriously with a bad ending are innovation in religion, bid'ah, and harboring doubts concerning Allah, His Messenger, and the last day. Innovation is a major problem. Innovation in belief. Innovation in criticizing the ulama. Innovation in declaring others as innovators, declaring others to be kafir. This is one of the bid'ahs that has entered this world that is a very, very serious one. And it doesn't leave the chest easily. The bid'ah of thinking bad about others. The minute I see somebody visiting the grave, he's a grave worshipper. The minute I see somebody standing in a mawlid, he believes this. The minute I see that, he's that. I'm declaring him a fasik, he's bad, he's good, he's a kafir, he's this. I'm looking at everyone and I'm forgetting about myself. That's one of the worst bid'ahs that has reached this world. Now, other things that threaten the perpetrators most seriously with a bad ending are innovation in religion, bid'ah, and harboring doubts concerning Allah, His Messenger, and the last day. So let every Muslim beware of these to the extreme. None is protected from Allah's decree except those He has mercy on. O most merciful of all, we ask you by the light of your noble countenance to take us to you as Muslims and make us join the virtuous in well-being, O Lord of the worlds. La ilaha illallah. Imam Haddad now goes on to a new chapter. We commence on the verse, a new section at least. We commence on the verse that says, and hold firmly to Allah's rope and do not divide. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبَلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا يعني وَلَا تَتَفَرَّقُوا. And perhaps the times that we are living in, we are very much in need on listening to Imam Haddad's interpretation of unity, of joining, of holding fast onto the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than ever before. So time is a bit late. Our classes have to, we don't have the luxury of extending our classes too long, primarily because of another class that will be playing on the Seekers Guidance platforms. So we're going to conclude with the, I before we conclude, there was just some matter that came up and I feel the need to address it. Some of the sisters were a bit worried about brothers that are joining us live, attending these classes live, and we want to say to those sisters that we hear their concerns and understand their concerns, and as far as possible we'll try to abide by the advices and guidelines that was given to us by our president. I do feel also that it's important that we put things into perspective. The COVID-19 pandemic is a real threat, and it's extremely important that everyone practice caution to the best of his and her ability. And the idea of social distancing and the lockdown and remaining out of one's home, remaining within one's home, are very important guidelines that we encourage our brothers and sisters to follow and to adhere to the best of their abilities. However, many a times there is grey areas, and there are people in their own various capacities sometimes to uphold a law entirely and completely is not always possible. I had a number of examples in mind, but I'm trying to be as short as I possibly can. So we want to reassure those sisters that yes, to the best of our ability, we follow the guidelines of our government. We maintain social distancing as far and as best as we possibly can. The imams that joined me in the past, I'm not too sure whether they had permits to leave home or not leave home, but even if they do have permits, whether they, because imams do have access to permits because of community work that we do, sometimes it's not very, we're not living in a black and white world. We're not living in a black and white world. Something is not black or white, is a large grey area. And if I find people engaging in a grey area, it's important that I maintain good thought as far and as best as possible. And from my good thought means that I don't engage in unnecessary discussion. If I wish to forward some advice, I should do so. If my advices are adhered and accepted, I say Alhamdulillah. If not, I maintain having good thought. Right? Imam Haddad spoke now about good endings, and good endings require us to abstain from wrongdoings. And the worst of wrongdoings is looking down upon a Muslim brother, and the worst of wrongdoings is having bad thought. The opposite of bad thought is to have good thought. So we do appreciate the directives that we receive from some of our sisters, and to the best of our ability we will be trying to implement that. However, if somebody is present with us and does happen to join to read or to recite, I think we should try our best to look for excuses and to perhaps understand that this may be falling into one of those grey areas. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. We're going to conclude with the adhkar of Ramadan, and thereafter we're going to read the dua khatm al-majlis. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله. نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. نستغفر الله. نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم.
يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا، فتب علينا توبة تصل لكل حوبة، واستر لنا العورات وآمن الروعات، واغفر لوالدينا ربي ومولودينا والآل والإخوان وسائر الخلان وكل ذي محبة أو جيرة أو صحبة والمسلمين أجمع. آمين ربي اسمع فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا، بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول، بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول، بالمصطفى الرسول نهضى بكل سول. صلى وسلم ربي عليه عد الحب وآله وصحبه عداد طش الصحب، والحمد لله في بدء وتناهي. سبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. في كل لحظة أبدا عدد خلقي ورضا نفسي وزنة عرشي ومداد كلماتي.
وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. الفاتحة. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.